April 1943. High over Europe, a German pilot scans the sky. Then, out of nowhere, a hulking American fighter explodes into view. It's not just any enemy, it's the P-47 Thunderbolt, the largest single-engine fighter the war has seen, armed with 8 machine guns and a monstrous radial engine that shrugs off damage that would down any other plane. Designed by Alexander Kartveli against all expectations, the so-called Jug will soon leave Luftwaffe crews reeling and force a total rethink of air combat itself. What was it about this flying juggernaut that turned certainty into shock, and how did a machine once doubted by its own backers become a legend? The answer begins with its radical birth. In 1940, Alexander Kartveli faced a challenge that few engineers dared to accept. Republic Aviation's chief designer, an émigré with a reputation for stubborn brilliance, was handed a simple directive from the Army Air Corps: build a fighter that could escort bombers at high altitude and survive the harshest combat Europe could offer. Kartveli refused to compromise on power or protection. Against the advice of many, he selected the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine, an 18-cylinder air-cooled radial that promised unmatched horsepower and, more importantly, could keep running even after absorbing enemy fire. The resulting prototype dwarfed its rivals. With a wingspan of nearly 41 feet and a loaded weight tipping 8 tons, this new machine towered over the flight line, its broad humped fuselage sparking immediate reactions from pilots and ground crew. Acceptance papers were signed in 1942, and the first production Thunderbolts began arriving at squadrons soon after. The sight of this giant on the ramp led to a nickname that stuck for the rest of the war: Jug. Pilots and mechanics used it with a mix of AWE and affection, noting the resemblance to a jug, bulky, rounded, and unmistakable from any angle. Some later claimed the name hinted at Juggernaut, a nod to its unstoppable character, but in every contemporary account, Jug was the word that echoed through hangars and ready rooms. By April 1943, the Jug was airborne over Europe, its presence impossible to ignore. The first combat sorties left an impression not just on the enemy, but on every Allied airman who watched this unlikely contender thunder down the runway and climb toward the fight. Armor lay at the heart of the Thunderbolt's design, shaping every line and system from the first engineering drawings to the last factory run. Republic Aviation's assembly lines, stretching from Farmingdale to Evansville, turned out nearly 15,000 Thunderbolts by war's end, a production feat unmatched by any other American fighter. The majority, about 13,000, were the P-47D model, a testament to the design's adaptability under constant wartime pressure. Early D models wore the distinctive razorback spine, a raised fuselage that protected the pilot but restricted rear visibility. Field complaints and combat feedback poured in. Pilots wanted a clearer view to spot enemy fighters and evade ground fire. Republic's engineers responded, reworking the upper fuselage and introducing the new bubble canopy. This change, first appearing midway through D model production, split the line almost evenly, half razorbacks, half bubble tops, each variant instantly recognizable on the ramp. Protective armor plate surrounded the cockpit and vital engine components, while the air-cooled radial engine itself reduced the risk of catastrophic failure from enemy hits. Maintenance memos and combat reports routinely described Thunderbolts returning with holes punched through the wings, flaps, and even engine cowls, damage that would have grounded most fighters. Yet the Jug's sheer mass and redundant systems meant it could often be patched up and flown again within hours. The scale of production, combined with these rugged features, gave the Thunderbolt a unique place in the Allied arsenal. A fighter that could absorb punishment, adapt to new threats, and roll off the line in numbers that kept pace with the shifting demands of the air war. Raw figures defined the Thunderbolt's reputation before it ever fired a shot. Flight tests clocked the P-47D at 426 miles per hour at 30,000 feet, faster than any American single-engine fighter before it, and outpacing most Luftwaffe interceptors above 25,000 feet. Pilots could climb to a ceiling of 42,000 feet, giving them the reach to meet bombers and enemy fighters where the air grew thin. Yet, the true shock came not just from speed, but from firepower. Each wing carried 4 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns for a total of 8, over 3,400 rounds, ready to unleash in short, devastating bursts. No other Allied fighter in 1943 brought this much concentrated fire to the fight. The Jugs gun battery could tear through armored vehicles, trains, and even the toughest enemy fighters, leaving behind a trail of shattered metal and burning fuel. The Thunderbolt's wings and belly were built to haul more than just guns. Ordnance racks let pilots load up to 2,500 pounds of bombs, more than some light bombers of the era. On ground attack runs, the P-47 could drop a full bomb load, then switch to strafing with its 8 guns, or launch rockets in rapid succession. This flexibility made the Thunderbolt a natural for both air-to-air duels and punishing ground assault. Combat logs from the summer of 1943 list missions where the same aircraft would down enemy fighters at altitude, then dive to smash rail yards or armored columns on the way home. Such versatility, backed by raw mechanical strength, set the Jug apart as a weapon of both precision and brute force. Combat pilots quickly learned that brute force and clever improvisation made the Thunderbolt more than just a heavy escort. In the skies over France and Italy, drop tanks slung beneath the wings doubled operational range, letting Jugs shepherd bombers deep into enemy territory, then jettison the tanks before diving into the fray. This simple act, shedding the extra weight, transformed the P-47 from a lumbering escort to a nimble adversary, ready to chase or evade at will. Luftwaffe debriefs from 1943 and 1944 described the shock of seeing Thunderbolts plummet from high altitude at speeds few German fighters could match, breaking up formations with a sudden, roaring attack. German pilots called them meteors for good reason. The Jugs' energy dive tactics made it nearly untouchable in a steep descent, and even veteran aces struggled to counter the sudden onslaught of 8.50 caliber guns. Tactics evolved as field upgrades made their mark. By late 1943, depot mechanics were fitting Thunderbolts with paddle blade propellers and water injection kits, squeezing more horsepower from the R2800 engine at low altitudes. These modifications, often installed in muddy airstrips or makeshift hangars, gave the Jug a new edge in close support and interception. Reports from the Mediterranean, Pacific, and China-Burma-India theaters tell the same story. The Thunderbolt adapted to jungle airfields, desert dust, and Himalayan passes, its rugged frame and flexible systems keeping it in the fight wherever Allied ground forces advanced. Ground crews became experts at improvisation, patching bullet holes, swapping out props, and rigging water tanks to keep the Jugs flying sortie after sortie. The combination of brute strength, tactical cunning, and field ingenuity turned the Thunderbolt into a global workhorse, feared by enemy pilots and respected by those who flew and fixed her. Victory tallies alone could not capture the spirit that defined the Thunderbolt's legacy. The P-47 was credited with destroying more than 7,000 enemy aircraft, but behind the numbers stood units like the 56th Fighter Group, Zemke's Wolfpack, who refused to trade their Jugs for lighter Mustangs even as the rest of the 8th Air Force made the switch in late 1944. Loyalty to the Jug ran deep, forged in the cockpit and on battered airstrips, where stories of survival became legend. On June 26, 1943, Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson limped home across the channel in a P-47, riddled with more than 200 holes, oil smeared across the windscreen, and at least one cylinder head shot clean off. Mechanics counted the damage in stunned silence, then patched the aircraft for another sortie. Such returns were not rare. Wolfpack logs are filled with tales of pilots bringing back aircraft missing chunks of wing or engine, living proof that for these crews, the Jug was more than a machine. It was a promise that, even under fire, you had a fighting chance to come home. The doctrine behind the Thunderbolt did not fade with the end of World War II. In the 1970s, Air Force engineers faced a new challenge: how to keep pilots alive while delivering devastating firepower at low altitude. Their answer was the A-10 Thunderbolt II, a machine built around a titanium-armored cockpit and a 7-barrel GAU-8 Avenger cannon. Like its namesake, the A-10 was designed to survive hits that would down other jets, returning again and again to support troops on the ground. The force multiplier logic that shaped the Jug, protect the pilot, ensure the plane comes home, and let experience accumulate, became the foundation of modern close air support. In both eras, engineers measured success not just by raw power or speed, but by the number of missions a battered aircraft could fly and the lives it saved with each return. Over 15,000 P-47 Thunderbolts were built, with more than 7,000 enemy aircraft destroyed by its pilots. Numbers drawn directly from USAAF records and after-action reports. What is clear is that the P-47's ruggedness shaped tactics then and influenced the design of the A-10 Thunderbolt II decades later. By connecting battlefield experience to future doctrine, the Thunderbolt's legacy endures, proven by the facts found in unit histories and engineering archives. The Jugs' impact is measured not just in victories, but in the standards it set for aircraft survivability and close air support.